Hey y'all, I'm back in my greenhouse today and it's raining outside. We're taking a little bit of break from our outside projects and I've got a few little things to do here in the greenhouse. A couple of weeks ago I cleaned out my greenhouse. I was working on it because it was a master disaster out here. And I have a few things that I'm working on and I thought I could show you those few little projects. Just visit a little bit. So some friends of mine went to a flower sale and they had two huge containers of snake plant, mother-in-law's tongue, Sansevieria, whatever you want to call it. They had two of those that were just busting at the seams, and they also had some damage due to the cold weather. And so I've already gone through this, got them out of the pot, cut off all that was bad because of the bad weather, the cold weather, and split this up. And I may even have to do some more splitting. It was extremely wet. It was extremely root bound. Now, but a Sansevieria, mother-in-law's tongue, snake plant, whatever, they love to be root bound. So don't worry about that as far as those type plants. They love being root bound. But my problem is when I cleaned out my greenhouse the other week, I got rid of a lot of pots that I've stored and saved and recycled that I haven't used in years. And because I'm having this garden tour of home, I wanted my greenhouse to look as nice as it could, so I just decided to get rid of some of those pots. Well, of course, the very next week I need some bigger size pots, but we're gonna make it do. I do have these. This is probably the biggest pot that I have, so we're going to see what we can do with this. So let's get started. For one thing that I wanted to show y'all, that when I took it out of the thing, I had to cut this apart. And one of the best things I've ever found to do that is a really nice long bread knife, because it can get through the whole plant. It's got the teeth on it to saw. This is a wonderful tool in your greenhouse. And I just got this at one of the thrift stores in town. I mean, it doesn't even have to be anything special, but I mean, it's an 8-inch steel bread knife. So let's see what we can do here. To get this down to a smaller size, I may have to cut some of these back. One of the reasons why my friends ended up buying these and giving these to me is because I had a huge snake plant, but I lost it in the big snowmageddon here in Texas. So they knew I love snake plants, and I always use them to propagate on, and I sell those and give them to people and that kind of thing. So when they found this and they bought these two huge pots, they bought them for $2 a piece. They knew I would be excited about that. So when she brought this to me, I was excited. So I'm separating these out because we are having, during our garden tour, we are going to sell some plants. So I wanted to get these potted up and get these going into some pots before our garden tour of homes. I split this little ones off because these kind of more go together in size. So it'll make a nice one for a small plant if somebody wanted just a small one. Now y'all might have noticed sometimes if they don't fit in the pot, I'm cutting the bottom off. You can't kill these plants. I'm telling you, you could cut the root ball off and it would still survive. So you can do a lot to this plant. This is a great beginner's plant because it will give you the confidence to grow something else. It can go in, it doesn't like a lot of light, so it's perfect for an indoor plant that you don't have a lot of light, a bathroom or something, hallway, something like that. It's a perfect plant for that. Before I cut it up, I want to show you. Just see how root bound that is? So I have a few little bits and pieces that I'm going to put in one container here and see how they do. Okay, so I got 9, 10, plus that little small one's 11 plants out of those 2 pots of plants that my friends paid $2 a piece for. And if you've not priced a Sansevieria lately, they can be very pricey. I will probably sell these for around $10 a piece, which is very cheap. And so out of $4, I've made $110. That is what you can do with your greenhouse. That's what you can do with your plants to make a little bit of extra money on your homestead. Let me go get I'm keeping this one for a mother plant for me. It's a pretty good size one. I'm gonna go get a nice pretty pot to put it in for me to keep this one, and I'll be right back. Woo! So I went and got this pot. This pot I got in an estate sale along with a bunch of other pots. And they are so heavy. I mean, like, really heavy. This pot probably weighs 10, 15 pounds on its own. It's really thick. You can really tell this is an old pottery pot because how thick it is, how heavy it is. They just don't make them like they used to, as the saying goes, but really and truly they do not. And I like these because this one's a beige color. They clean up real nice, and that way if I have them in my house, I'm trying to go with a real cohesive pots that all kind of look alike, and this beige is real pretty in my house. One thing you also may be noticing me uses is scoop. This is a feed scoop. Very nice for when you're potting your plants. Works really well. So this is one of my projects completed today. Underneath this bench I have a little container that I scrape any kind of used soil, anything that can break down leaves, dead leaves, that kind of thing. And I take that to my compost pile when that gets filled up. Just keeps my greenhouse a little bit cleaner, which I need all the help I can get because I'm a messy greenhouse person.
Yeah.
You would do me a favor, would you?
Carry that somewhere.
Yeah, on that table out there. It's heavy.
Come open the door for me.
Do it.
Go ahead. Where do you want it? Oh, the yellow table?
Yeah. All right, so the next project that I have to tackle is this. This is a pencil cactus that I started as just a small little plant, and it's grown to this. It actually last summer it touched the roof of my greenhouse, the peak of it, and it got burnt because the heat off the greenhouse. So I knew I was gonna have to tackle it somehow up there, like I was going to just chop it off and let it go. Well, then after the freeze of Snowmageddon, a lot of my heat went up into my greenhouse, which was good, but this part down here, a lot of the limbs died, and it's getting to be such an old growth tree that it's getting very barky on the skin. I'll bring you over here and show it to you. So it's just not looking very pleasing to the eye. So what my plan is today is to actually cut this all off and start anew. And sometimes you just have to do that. You just can't always have, I mean, sometimes just things get too big if it's not out in the natural environment, okay? See how this stalk has gotten real woody? And then it goes green. This is how it should look, this green stalk. That's how it should look. So I'm going to cut all these off. So it reaches the top of my greenhouse and start some of these branches and propagate some of these branches out and start anew. It'll give me a little bit more room in my greenhouse to get this out of here. All right, so I had to call in for backup. My husband came in here and he cut the top of that pencil cactus off and got the trunk and the root ball out of that pot. So now I'm left with this big pot, this big monstrosity that was at the top. And I'm thinking about legging this up, cleaning up the top, and putting it back in that same pot to see if it will root out. I know this is a huge tree, but these roots so easily, I'm thinking I'm going to try. So I'm going to clean up this top, cut off these dead and burnt tips that got scorched from hitting the tops of my greenhouse. Wish y'all could see what I was doing here. Let me see if I can get back in frame. Some people are very sensitive to the sap that's on this plant, but it's never really bothered me before. So, but if you were worried about it, it would be something that you need to wear gloves. When I'm done with all this, I'll give my hands a good washing. I've needed to do this for several years, but I just didn't want to tackle it. Sometimes you just got to wrap your mind around it and tackle it. All right, so there's a few limbs down here I'm going to clean up. I think I am, if I can. Since I had surgery on my thumb's not real strong. My cutters need sharpening. There. That made a clean cut. This will work or it won't work, but it's not a very pretty plant right now anyway, so that's kind of always my thought processes. Ah! That was a yellow jacket in there. Hold on, I'm going to have to stomp on that. What this looks like. All right, so here it is back in its pot. And I'm going to bring in some more soil. I'm not going to water this in. I'm going to let it sit there for a little while, because it has a lot of those things, open spots where I've cut those limbs off, and I don't want them to get diseased. It looks better, even if it's Hopefully it will survive, but it does look better than it did. So I got it in there. We'll see what happens. I got my husband to move it over to the side of my greenhouse, which is a nice place for big pots. Gets out of the way of the traffic area. And then I want to show y'all. Look, this opened up my greenhouse so much. I'm excited about that. That's another project for another day, to clean out my greenhouse. But all right, so now I'm going to work on all these things that I've cut off. Let me find some pots. Just going to dip that down in there. And it is as easy as just stick it in this pot. And we'll see what happens. Let me work on some of these and I'll get back to you. So I got this all potted up. I got 8 this size and 2 of this size, plus the big one that I'm hoping will take root. So I could have gotten hundreds out of this, but the top of that plant was very damaged from the heat, and then the bottom was damaged because of the cold. So I picked, what I could out of it and start afresh. But if the plant would have been healthy, I could have gotten hundreds and hundreds off this thing. And one pot like this, if you were to buy this at any of the big box stores, you'd pay $25 every day of the week for this, because there's not very many of them. So that's another one of my ways that I make money on my homestead. I just propagate these. I give them away as gifts. I sell them at garage sales, that kind of thing. All right, so here is a plant that I bought a while back, even before the freeze. That it was on the Lowe's clearance aisle, and it's just either a Haworthia or an Aloe. But I bought it because it was so full, and I could break it up. So that's what I'm going to do today. I wish it said it's an Aloe. It's called Crosby's Prolific. So I'm just going to break these apart. Let me see if I can get y'all down here where y'all can see what I'm doing. These will be easy. There will be some stuff in here that's not any good. That just goes in my compost bin over here. You can tell this one had like 2 big plants about that size in here, and all these babies come off of that. All right. I'm just getting these all pulled apart, and then we'll go to the next step. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to kind of clean this up down here at the bottom. Usually they'll peel off. If they don't, you can have scissors. Just cleaning up the roots here. Some that don't look so good. Some little brown tips I'm going to clip off. ready to plant. But I'm going to get them all cleaned up first. You can save one that's just that little. So see, I'm just pulling off these bottom ones that don't look so good. Trimming up these roots a little bit. It's ready to plant. So this is a succulent. You know, right now succulents, if you can pay $3 or $4 or more for a nice succulent this small. So this is that had some roots, but they didn't look very good, so I'm gonna kind of get back. Ow, shoot. Almost cut myself. Get back here where it's kind of a more of a healthy plant. And I try to save all of them, so even this little whippersnapper right here, I'll try to save it. There's another one in there. This one's really soggy. So I'm going to cut this one away and let it kind of dry out a few days before I repot it. Or if I do pot it up, I definitely won't water it. But it's real boggy right there, so I probably will just let this one dry out a little bit. Alright, so I've got a few pots put together. So I'm going to get some more pots together and pot these up. And then I'll have this many plants just from that one plant that I bought and broke apart. So I've got this whole tray potted up. And I've got some bigger ones right here that I'm going to put in some bigger individual pots. Alright, and then I've got 5 bigger plants. I'm going to save this tag. See, I paid $8.98 for that plant. And look how many I got out of it. So there you go.